Welcome to Cybersecurity Awareness TV, episode 371, recorded October 16th, 2021. I'm your host, Mack Jackson Jr. Folks, I want to welcome you to our show, Cybersecurity Awareness TV, and if you're the first time that you've heard of the show, I want to again thank you for being a part of our TV family, and want to let you know that we have information for you that can help you fight and protect yourself against the fastest growing crimes of the 21st century. That is cyber crimes and identity theft. I want to thank all of our folks from around the world who've been a part of Cybersecurity Awareness TV to help make this show possible. Our listeners, like you, are concerned about cyber theft and how to protect themselves. You can find out more information about my company and my show at mackjacksonjr.com. That's mackjacksonjr.com. Remember, folks, to share, like, and subscribe to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In today's episode, we're talking about in cyber news. We're going to talk about what the government is doing to protect us from these cyber crimes. The White House has been talking with CEOs regarding cybersecurity strategies and and what they're doing to protect us from these cyber attacks. Also, there is an interview with Senator Mark Warner. He's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he will also discuss what our Congress is doing right now to protect our homeland from these types of cyber attacks. In our second segment, we're going to talk about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This month is Cybersecurity Awareness Month with a report called The Road to Cybersecurity. Our third segment is our weekly cybersecurity tips, information, and education. But in our cyber news, what is our government doing to protect us from cyber crimes? On our show, Cybersecurity Awareness TV, folks, we have talked countlessly about the uprising of cyber attacks and cyber threats that are facing our homeland. We've talked about how businesses, government agencies, and individuals have been attacked by these cyber criminals worldwide. But then the question is, what are we doing about it? What are our businesses, what are governments, law enforcement doing about these type of cyber attacks? And folks, there is a lot being done. Our U.S. team has a group of intelligence programmers and hackers that have gone around the world helping to mitigate these type of cyber thieves, and our lawyers U.S. lawyers are prosecuting these type of cyber attacks internationally, including putting sanctions on nation states that have been involved in these types of cyber attacks. Recently, the White House and industry experts and CEOs have gathered together to discuss their strategies and planning for protecting our homeland against these cyber attacks. Here's a clip from the White House.
Meantime, President Joe Biden will meet today with top executives from several of the largest companies in technology, financial services, insurance, energy, and education to discuss how to combat cybersecurity threats. The events come after the U.S. experienced several large cyber attacks that have added urgency to the public and private sectors in containing these threats. Joining us now is Ann Neuberger, White House Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technology, who will be attending today's summit, has been the point person on the White House for this. Ann, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Sarah. It's great to be here with you.
What's your goal in talking to these private sector leaders today?
The U.S. faces some significant malicious cyber activity, and President Biden has put a focus on addressing that activity with a range of far-reaching government initiatives, including his executive order in May that focused on the security of software, his industrial control security initiative that focused on rolling out cybersecurity to 150 utilities serving 90 million Americans. But the government can't do it alone. The private sector is a key partner in security of technology and critical infrastructure and building talent. So today's meeting is a call to action on that partnership.
Reports after a briefing from the White House that there's an expectation that companies might announce specific targets or commitments on the cybersecurity front. What do you have in mind?
Yes, there'll be an exciting set of commitments announced at the conclusion of the meeting, the conclusion of a lot of work in the preceding weeks between government and really key companies. Some of the things we're looking for is companies' announcements on how they'll bake in security in software and hardware technology as they build it. Really the best way to have security and technology. You know, when we buy a car, we buy it with the seatbelts and airbags a part of it. That's what we're looking for in technology. And similarly, from a talent perspective, there are 500,000 open cyber jobs today in America, and we've brought together a diverse group from traditional colleges to community colleges to organizations like Code.org to help build that talent. And we also want to discuss with the companies how they can provide opportunities for on-the-job training and internships. So a lot of exciting initiatives coming out of today's discussions.
So as it relates to the commitments, are you suggesting that some of the vulnerabilities we've faced lately, and it really has ramped up even since President Biden took office, has been because the private sector is just not spending enough money on some of these cyber controls, on these seatbelts, as you say, and other safety measures? Are they not focused in the right place? What's been the problem?
The threat has really changed, and we need to change the way we operate to meet that threat. So to your point, the security that's baked into technology is not adequate to meet the threat. And similarly, I'll give another example. You know, insurance incentivizes us in various safe practices, like driving a car below the speed limit or installing smoke detectors in our homes. So we're looking to see, can insurance incentivize companies to patch quickly, to do incident response in a more strategic way and share information. So what we're really talking about is how do we up our game across technology, across practices, across building the talent, and very significantly across the resilience of critical infrastructure to meet the threat.
You know, Ann, we cover cybersecurity stocks pretty often here on CNBC, and we were looking for them on the invite list, but it does seem like you're going more for names that would bring you scale and attention. Can you talk about where, for example, a Palo Alto would fit in this invite list?
That's a really thoughtful question. First, this isn't going to be the last meeting with the private sector on cybersecurity. The president really places a commitment on cyber, so this reflects both his focus on the role of the private sector, listening to what they have to say, and also, as I said, a call to action. For this particular first meeting, we really focused on the companies who can scale security. So, for example, I often look to Walmart and RFID. When Walmart announced to their suppliers that they were looking for them to track things via radio frequency identification, that moved an entire sector to automated better tracking. These kinds of companies announcing, for example, that their suppliers need to put in place certain security practices would then move the whole ecosystem. There's a scale, as you said, that they can bring to the cybersecurity front that we're looking for them to do. And the key part really is, how do we make security baked in by design so it isn't a separate standalone thing?
And, you know, in the past, there's also been a lack of communication, perhaps, broadly speaking, amongst corporate America. You know, and I know this in terms of the intrusions by the Chinese in particular when it comes to cyber espionage. Now, it's become a much more important issue. It's a board-level issue. But are you going to be, and are you taking actions to try to increase the amount of interaction between corporations so they can share best practices and, frankly, share what the heck's going on with them right at the very moment?
It's a really good question. There are complex reasons why companies don't share information about incidents, including protection of brand, etc. But to your point, it holds us back from most effectively preventing a particular cyber technique being used again and again to compromise more companies. One of the reasons we invited the banking sector is because they have some of the best cross-sector collaboration on cybersecurity threats, both within the sector and with the government. And we want to hear from them how we can build that model and take it to other sectors as well.
What about the government itself, Ann? A lot of talk, obviously, today and hear from you about the private sector, but you've called out China, Russia, haven't seen sanctions necessarily. How is the Biden administration fighting back against these attacks?
Absolutely. So I'll note a few particular initiatives, and there will be some announcements today as well. So the president's executive order on cybersecurity really rolled out far-reaching initiatives, things like requiring the federal government to roll out multi-factor authentication within 6 months. That's saying we're going to lead in the practices we think everybody should be doing. Things like requiring software that we buy, critical software, to meet a particular standard. That doesn't just raise the standard of software we use in the government, because we're all using the same software, companies, agencies, state and local, etc. So those were some of the key initiatives. I mentioned his industrial security initiative. And as you've seen, some of the major attributions that we did, building partnerships around the world to join us. So you saw the president's announcement at the G7 on building a coalition to fight ransomware. Interestingly enough, actually today at the White House, we're inviting in 30 countries for a working level session on that coalition, on that international coalition to fight ransomware. And you saw other initiatives announced at NATO and in other places as well. So we're taking President Biden is really taking a holistic approach across modernizing the U.S. defenses, across building partnerships with countries around the world, both to share information as well as to hold countries accountable who do malicious cyber activity, and to ensure we're bringing that whole of government approach to fighting malicious cyber activity.
Great report, and we hope that our government will be doing a lot more, and organizations around the world and CEOs to protect our homeland from these type of cyber attacks. Now, regarding ransomware, again, folks, is one of the most prevalent cyber attacks that affects all businesses and individuals. These thieves use all kinds of tactics in order to get your data and to extort your monies from you. Now, one of the biggest ways that they're extorting money from individuals and businesses is by using cryptocurrency. Now, should the U.S. government and governments around the world take a second look at cryptocurrency? All of us are starting to use this new form of monetary cash value that we're using to buy goods and services because it's anonymous. But also, the thieves are found a way to utilize this anonymity in order to extort and exploit individuals. Here's a clip on the challenges of that, and we will discuss it as well.
Joining me now is Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He's, of course, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Warner, welcome back to Meet the Press. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, in a Wall Street Journal interview, essentially invoked 9/11 in sort of how to deal with these asymmetrical groups, these cells. Well, we called them terrorist cells in 2001 and 2002. Are these cyber criminals terrorists?
Well, Chuck, let's step back and look at this problem. We've been talking about cyber for a long time, but finally the American public is starting to wake up to the ramifications of these attacks. There's generally been two types of cyber incidents. One, where a nation state steals information. Two, where cyber criminals come in and threaten to shut down a system and demand ransomware. We've seen these individual attacks against pipeline companies, ferry companies, meatpacking companies. What I'm really worried about is if we saw the kind of massive across the system attack that took place last year, the SolarWinds attack, there Russians got into 18,000 different companies. If that attack had been an effort to shut down our system, our economy would have come to a halt the way when Russia attacked Ukraine. So I think we ought to do three things. One, we ought to put in place, and we've got bipartisan legislation to do this, to require that when companies get attacked, they notify the government. There is no requirement right now. Second, we do need international norms so that when cyber groups out of Russia, because they're not just attacking us, they shut down the Irish healthcare system, we need international norms. And third, we need to have more transparency. There's going to be a debate about whether these companies should pay ransomware, but there ought to be more transparency if a company does pay so we can go after the bad guys. All
right, you have pre-answered a couple of questions I have, but I'm going to pick up on that last point. Should we make it illegal to pay ransoms? I mean, it's a simple, many people think this is a simple solution, right? You don't pay the ransoms, the attacks will stop coming.
Well, I think that's a debate worth having. I'm not sure what the answer is at this point, because the alternative, if you shut down a system, and in the case of Colonial Pipeline, we saw even after they paid the ransom, it took 5 days. But what we should make sure, as we have that debate, let's make sure if companies do pay, there is transparency to those payments. Last year, I worked on legislation that became law to tighten up our illegal cash payments, the use of dummy corporations. Right. America was frankly not even at international standards. We need more transparency, because right now what's happening around ransomware, not only are the companies often not reporting that they are attacked, but they're not reporting the ransomware payments.
Look, I want to get to the ransomware payment issue in a second, but I want to talk about, you said you want to make it basically illegal to not report a ransomware attack if you're a company based in the United States. What about a step further where you mandate a minimum level of security? If you want to be a defense contractor, you have to prove your ability to handle classified information. You know this very well. At some point, is that how Colonial has to be treated? JBS, anybody that sells essentially goods and services in the United States?
Chuck, here's the challenge. We do need higher cybersecurity standards. There ought to be penalties. I think many of us remember a few years back when Equifax lost all our information.
Right.
In that case, it was to the Chinese. They were totally negligent. So there does need to be, I believe, some level of liability for companies that don't hit these standards. Right. But the truth is, when you've got a tier one adversary like Russia or China, not so much these cyber criminals, but a tier one adversary in terms of their spy services, right, it's tough to be 100% perfect all the time. That's why if we have a incident reporting requirement,
yep,
mid-attack, and I give the company some limited liability protection, and that needs to come into the government, but also share with the private sector. Microsoft, Amazon, the cloud providers, right, the other cybersecurity companies. We need to have a public-private response team to this, and that's going to require that mandatory reporting.
Look, there's another idea that's out there. Simply this, in the Wall Street Journal, ban cryptocurrency to fight ransomware. The fact of the matter is, without the ability of the anonymity of crypto, we would not have this intense situation now. I know how popular it is. There's like a rave going down in Miami this weekend for people wanting crypto. But crypto's popularity is its anonymity. And it seems as if why people like it is they get to hide where their money came from. Sounds like an illegal enterprise to me.
Well, Chuck, I got a lot of questions about crypto. There were some good things coming out of distributed ledger technology, but we are seeing now some of the dark underbelly. The challenge is, and that's why I'm focusing more on transparency, the truth is there are ways that we can break through some of these systems. But if we don't have if a company is paying, if there's not some transparency to that payment, the bad guys will simply find another way to hide it. So this is an area where, frankly, again, our country has been behind the international norms. We got better on bipartisan legislation last year, but this debate about crypto and ransomware is just starting. So that's why, in the meantime, let's put in place these transparency requirements.
All right, there's one other idea out there, and it's about going more on the offensive against Russia for being a safe harbor and for doing what they did. But I want to show you something here. I hope you can see this graphic. These are all the different ways the United States has tried to confront Russian aggression. Going back to 2014, we've ejected them from the G7, right? It's not the G8 anymore. Plenty of sanctions. There have been import restrictions. We've expelled diplomats. We've seized their assets. We've had indictments. None of it has stopped his behavior. What would it take, do you think, to curtail Putin's behavior here?
Well, two things, Chuck. One, I do think we need to have the ability to use some of our offensive capabilities. And we have done a better job on that. If we look at our ability to cut back on some of the Russian election interference, that was because we were willing to punch back. But what we also need, and this is why I see we need these level of international norms so that a country like Russia would know if they are harboring cyber criminals and you're shutting down a healthcare system, for example, the way these cyber criminals did in Ireland recently, there needs to be international repercussions, not simply one-off the United States acting alone. That's why President Biden going and rallying the democracies at the G7 meeting is so important.
Senator Mark Warner, I'm going to have to leave it there, chair of the Senate Intel Committee. We will find out in about 10 days how well Biden's confrontation goes with Putin.
As you can see, folks, there's definitely things that our government is doing to protect us from these cyber attacks, but we as individuals and as businesses must do our part as well. And you can do yours by staying aware of these types of cyber attacks and protecting your employees and individuals from these cyber thieves. One of the things you could do, folks, is to join our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Mack Jackson Jr., where you can have a look at what hackers are doing and how they can exploit your businesses and things you do to protect yourselves. Folks, we thank you very much, and we'll be back after these messages. Hi, folks. I would like to welcome Ben Bowie from MyNiceTie.com as one of our newest sponsors for Cybersecurity Awareness TV. At MyNiceTie.com, they provide and are committed to providing classy neckties for the business community. At MyNiceTie.com, their motto is Wise Up, Suit Up, and Stand Up. You can find nice ties like the one I'm wearing now at MyNiceTies.com. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In this segment, we're going to celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And Cybersecurity Awareness Month will talk about what our government is recommending that the U.S. citizens do to be aware of cybersecurity around our country and what you could do to protect yourself and our homeland. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, otherwise known as NCSAM. This is a nationwide collaboration event led by the National Cybersecurity Alliance and the U.S. government, Homeland Security, to help Americans understand and avoid various risks that faced in the digital world and the internet. The U.S. Department of Energy is also proud to be a partner of this cybersecurity awareness efforts. I have a clip here to show you from InfoSec, where Keaton Evans will talk about the challenges of cybersecurity awareness on the road.
Hello, I'm Keaton Evans, cybersecurity expert and principal security researcher here at InfoSec. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and these days protecting your data is more important than ever. This year saw a record number of serious phishing and ransomware attacks. Several made national news and may have impacted you personally. But how did these attacks happen? What made them so successful? And what can you do to stop this from happening to you or your organization? Let's talk about getting you on the road to cybersecurity. When it comes to cybersecurity, there are many wrong turns you can take. First, let's look at a few examples of where things went wrong in 2021. Security is not a game, but plenty of attackers still play to win. A group of hackers used social engineering techniques to steal valuable information from game publisher Electronic Arts. They convinced an IT support representative via Slack that they had lost their 2FA authentication token, which was tied to a mobile phone and required to gain remote access to the internal corporate EA network. Support issued a new one, and the hackers were let loose inside EA systems. Sounds like they won this round. One of the biggest hack stories of the year paralyzed several areas, caused the US president to declare a state of emergency, and led to widespread panic about a new energy crisis. It was also the result of a single stolen password. In early May 2021, the Colonial Pipeline Company was hit by a ransomware attack. The pipeline was out of commission for 6 days. Ultimately, the Colonial Pipeline Company paid more than $4 million to restore service. How did this happen? The company was using a virtual private network that could be accessed with a single password. Without multi-factor authentication, a single strong password wasn't strong enough. Hackers use many techniques to access their target systems. However, a few simple behaviors will stop most hacking attempts dead in their tracks. First, go slow. Attackers want you to act fast and not think twice. When they force you to rush, they force you to make bad choices. By slowing down, you have the time to think carefully and spot the dangers. Second, be suspicious. Messages that look completely harmless could come from someone impersonating a friend or a family member. Always think about the ways something could be used as a trap. You don't have to hide from the world, but by going slow and being suspicious, you protect yourself and your organization. In the EA hack, the attackers got access by convincing tech support to issue an authentication token. If that tech had been a little more suspicious, a major security breach could have been avoided. Third, verify. It may be difficult to tell a real message from a fake one. If you receive an unusual request or a message that asks you to violate procedure, reach out to the sender via an alternate channel to confirm that they sent it. Fourth, report it. Cybersecurity problems often start small and spread fast. If you see something suspicious or just a little weird, don't ignore it. Check your organizational policy to see who you should speak to. Fifth, follow policies and procedures. Your organization knows the risk and is always planning ahead. Take a moment to review any updated policies and procedures, and make sure you know what to do in case of an emergency or a data breach. As you can see, there's a lot to consider when you're dealing with cybersecurity. Hackers are relentless and the number of attacks is increasing. By following a few simple rules, paying attention to warning signs, and using your common sense, you can keep yourself and your organization safe.
Yes, folks, and we all must do our part in protecting our homeland against these cyber attacks. Folks, our best defense against a cyber attack is through education and training. And to have your employees trained, definitely go to my website at mackjacksonjr.com. That's mackjacksonjr.com. And also join us, be a member on our Patreon channel at patreon.com/mackjacksonjr. Folks, we'll be back after these messages.
You can help limit the damage from identity theft with some quick responses. Placing a fraud alert on your credit reports, filing a complaint with the FTC, and then filing a police report. Taking these steps will give you some important tools to deal with other problems that may come up, like charges you didn't authorize on your credit card, phone, or utility bills, like ATM withdrawals or debit card purchases you didn't approve, like getting a letter from the IRS saying someone has filed for a tax refund in your name. Keep records of your calls and copies of documents. If these problems do come up later, you'll have the necessary tools close at hand. For more tips and tools on dealing with identity theft, visit ftc.gov/ID theft. That's ftc.gov/ID theft.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. I'm your host, Mack Jackson Jr. Folks, scammers are getting very creative on how to use social media to getting our personal data and, in other words, getting us to hand it over to them. Now these scammers are using another brazen attack. They're coming after our smartphones and our smart devices. So besides just getting an email and have to worry about phishing attacks, attacking you on your emails and at work and at home, now these scammers are starting to use our smart devices. That's right, folks, use our smart devices to get you to hand over personal information. Here's a couple scenarios of what's being done by these hackers. What they'll do is they'll send you a phishing attack using your smartphone. It'll come as a text message. It'll state that it's from Amazon, stating that one of the last orders that you've processed is invalid and you must correct it by clicking on a link. Now this is a link you're going to click on with your phone. Very creative. Usually all of us, we're not used to getting text messages where they can be vulnerable, right? We're always heard of the phishing attacks from emails, but your text message from your phone are also very, very vulnerable. If you were to click on a link, folks, from one of these text messages from the scammers, it can lead you to a website that is totally fake by the actual scammer, or it can put malware on your phone. And what that is, folks, it makes your device a sleeper cell. In other words, malware is transferred on your phone by you clicking on this link. Then when you use your phone to access your bank account, your checking account, the scammers use a technique called key logging. And basically what that is like someone watching over your shoulder all your activity when you enter into a website and enter your user ID and your password and personal information. And scammers use that information to log back in after you've exited out and change your passwords behind your back while you don't even know this is happening. So there's some things that you could do to protect yourself from this. We'll discuss a little bit of those today. The first thing, folks, if you get one of these text messages and that's from your smart device, a lot of us will look at that and think, wow, who is this from? And they are not sure what to do, because the text message will say something like urgent, ASAP, it's your bank. You must click on this link immediately to correct a order that you've placed or a flaw on your account. And those of us will mainly try to click on this text to find out what's regarding. First of all, folks, don't panic. You look at the text messages, you see this information. First thing I recommend is to contact the subscriber directly, the old-fashioned way, like picking up the telephone and give them a call, or check your voicemail. Use means of communication that you've already established with the actual sender, other than this text message. And there's several different stories out there involving this types of scam. A couple of them I'll go over with you is one from Amazon. I'm sure you get these calls all the time. The whole Amazon call that you have an order of an iPhone that's been processed on your account, and there's been an error in the last digits of your credit card, and they need to have that corrected. Now, these scammers are really slick at this. Sometimes they'll have partial information because they've hacked into one of the third-party organizations and got part of your information. So they'll let you know they'll have the last 4 digits, and you'll think that's a legitimate company. But as you're talking with them on the phone, they're asking you for additional information. They contacted you. They should have that information. What I would do, and I recommend that you do as well, is tell them you will have to research this and get back with them. Call them back and ask the customer service, was there a phone call ever made? And if there wasn't, then ignore it. Then totally ignore the scam. Secondly, if you get these type of message that states that your order is being tracked by FedEx, and here's a FedEx phone number and a tracking number, be careful not to click on that. They get us by thinking that these is something that we want to click on and to find out more information about our actual shipment. Again, you got a text message, folks, about this shipment. Go to the FedEx website itself and check on your order if you have a legitimate order being processed. Secondly, a lot of these scammers will send you a type of text message that says, stop to avoid any future messages from us. Do not type the word stop back to them, because what happens, folks, is that it's like a sort of phishing, but with your cell phone. By clicking on stop lets the actual scammer know that this phone number that you're sending them back is a legitimate phone number. And they'll turn around and sell your data to another group of scammers. Then you'll get information scammed from you from another different organization in the dark net. The best thing to do, folks, is to ignore it. Now, again, this can be daunting, too, if you're getting a lot of these text messages. But our government, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and FCC, Federal Communication Commission, has also suggested that there are ways that you can let them know of these types of scams, and you can report these types of scams to our federal government to let them know. What you should do, you should forward these types of weird scam messages to the Federal Trade Commission by forwarding it to 7726. That's 7726. And what the Federal Trade Commission will do, they will investigate these types of scammers. They're collecting these types of information and using this to prosecute and go after these types of scammers for this type of illegal activity. And I would suggest that we all take a look at this, because, folks, all they have to do is to be right once. That's right, folks. They have to be right once. We have to be right every time we get one of these activities sent to us. Our best defense to fight against this type of cyber attacks is through education. And you could be trained, folks, this types of scams. In my upcoming video I have on our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Mack Jackson Jr., where I will go over with you ways to look at a legitimate email from a hacker and what to look out for. You go to become a member of our Patreon channel, and I will show you how to detect and find these types of hacking emails and text scams so you can avoid them with your employees and individually at home. Again, folks, become a member of my Patreon channel at patreon.com/Mack Jackson Jr. The other tip, folks, I will give you, like we talk about every week, make sure that you change your passwords and have password management system to protect your passwords when you're logging on any types of websites. One of the best ways is use a password management system such as LastPass. LastPass is a great a password management system that allows you to protect your passwords. You could sign up for LastPass by going to my website at mackjacksonjr.com and click on affiliates, and you'll see LastPass, where you could sign up and protect all your devices, including your smartphones, your laptops, and desktops at home and at work. Also, folks, when you log into different websites, check out to see if they have multi-factor authentication. In other words, two-factor authentication. Again, we talked about that before. It means that you have your first factors, you're using your user ID and your password to log into the website. The second factor is the website that you're logging into will send you a code to your smartphone or to an email authorizing you to access your information, making sure that you're legitimate and you make sure they're legitimate as well. These are just some of the things that you could do, folks, to protect yourselves from these types of cyber crimes and cyber thefts that happen to us all the time. But again, folks, I'm stressing you should come to my website at patreon.com/Mack Jackson Jr. I will have other videos there from hackers and interviews with hackers that are coming up from the underground, talking about what they have done and what they do to get your data. And these hackers, of course, are prosecuted right now by our federal government, and a lot of them are in the dark net as well. So they're hiding their anonymity, but they want to bring this information to the public so we can protect ourselves from these types of thieves that are going on. That's our show this week, folks. Cybersecurity Awareness TV. I want to thank you all for being a part of it. And again, folks, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, at Mack Jackson Jr., on all these different platforms. Remember, folks, on our YouTube channel and for Roku as well. Remember, folks, share, like, and subscribe to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. #StayCyberWork. We'll see you next week. Thank you.